Time your schedule doesn't allow you to stay online with us, then so to drop off and then send us an email afterwards, and we'd be glad to catch up with you in any particular areas of knowledge that you need from this discussion. Our focus today is going to cover off on the following agenda. First off, I'm going to give you a little bit of overview about who Miria Systems is and why I think we're qualified to talk about this. We're going to cover the business challenge, of information overload. As this email went out to everyone, it talks about fax, paper, scanning, mail, and how do you integrate all that into your business process. We're going to talk about a little bit about self-assessment, give you information for you to judge where you are in terms of automating your processes. I'm going to talk about how to approach it. We're going to talk a little bit about how technology works and a few case examples at the end if we have time, along with a section for questions and answers. But once again, if there are questions come up, please feel free to use the chat on WebEx or send out to j.lanigan@Miria Systems. So a little bit about Miria. We've been in business for 25 years, and we're in business process automation and content enablement. We're a premier business partner, so some of the discussion today will utilize and leverage several items from the IBM portfolio of products. We are also the deliverer of a product called Managed Pay, which is a highly configurable application platform that enables integration to existing systems and business content, specifically around accounts payable, automation, and management. And we like to think of ourselves as thought leaders in content enablement and business process automation, which is what brings us here today. Some of those capabilities going around the list here. First off, Intel Capture. That's a part of what we'll cover today. Content management, of course, business process automation. These first three circles are all subjects that we are going to be focused on today. Although we will not cover into detail accounts payable management, content analytics, mobilization, or business intelligence, but we will talk a little bit about how those are derived from the same technologies we're talking about. Miria is a full-service provider. We provide business process automation and content enablement across the full life cycle. If you take a look at the existing slide from left to right, this usually goes in terms of capture. How do I collect the data or the pages and the information or the facts of the email, and how do I turn it into data or information? How to activate it or integrate it with your business process so that the content itself becomes part of your overall process on an automated basis. How do you socialize it or collaborate? How to utilize it or derive business intelligence? And in many cases, for industries, how you govern it. How do you maintain record retention? How do you maintain long-term archives for legal or regulatory compliance? Those are items that Miria can help you address depending on the nature of your business. Miria customers include a large portfolio, a little bit of the sample here. We show you some of our top customers in the financial market, which would include Wallenese Insurance, Thrivent Financial, Jumping, as well as others. Retail and consumer packaged goods, Cabela's, P.F. Chang's, Tyco, DHL are some of the customers. In the healthcare industry, we do several things around records, around medical funds management for companies such as Tyco, Baxter, and Invacare. And then we do a lot of complex content management in terms of engineering-based companies such as Pennsylvania Power and Light, Pep Holdings, Hewlett-Packard, and other companies in the industry or in the energy markets. So Miria Systems is a full-service provider. We obviously provide the products and services we're going to be talking about today, but we think we're unique in terms of our ability also to provide full support to our customers. We not only deliver the products and projects with our clients, we also help them train. We help them with change management, which often becomes an issue in terms of moving from a manual to an automated-based system and having the users understand the value. We help them with continuous improvement. We help them with performance monitoring and long-term support, and so they don't have to spin all of these, their internal IT groups up on the technology itself. So let's talk a little bit about the business challenge when we get into this subject. So here's a little bit of the word as you know, I see it today. We're all doing more for less. I know we've been saying this for 40 years, but it's really true today. When times are good, companies grow processes quick by adding people. And when then times go bad, sort of what started for most of the economy in the U.S. in 2008, companies cut people and dump the work on those left behind. It's not a nice word, of course, but that way the employee often perceives it is they have to do a lot more with less. And then times are recovering, and depending on who you talk to politically, we're either in a recovery or we're in a continuing recession, or if you turn on the wrong news channel or the right news channel, you may hear that it's even worse than that. But most of us agree we're in some type of recovery right now as far as an economy. And what most companies are doing is that they have to continue asking those already doing more to continue doing more, and sometimes to continue doing more and more. And at some point, you reach a point of saturation, and at some point, you have to make a choice. Now, in terms of the business process automation, the choices can come down to a few options. So in the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to drill it into three. Choice number one, you can take the left arrow and you can hire back people, putting more people involved, maybe go to additional shifts, maybe add more processing people to move forward. Third option, second option here is really more to automate, which is obviously what we're advocating today. There is, of course, a third option. That is, you can close your eyes and hope for better things and choose not to do anything different. Obviously, the premise here today is to talk about, when you make the right choices and how do you judge that and how do you qualify what your return on investment is. So talk about business process automation, whether we talk about capturing images or we talking about enabling content to become part of a business process automation. There's return on investment you have to look at. Almost every corporation in the current world today requires a justifiable ROI before you're going to start any project. You have to do an ROI to hire somebody, and you really have to do a stronger ROI in order to add IT solutions or business process automation. Now, manpower efficiency is always the goal when we're talking about business process automation. It may also be quality improvement, it may be customer service, but for the most part, when we're talking about the return on investment, the money and the time is in the people. How do you take the work that requires 6 people a day, make it so that it requires 3 people somewhere down the road, and then ultimately get it down to the point where maybe one person can do the work of 6 people as opposed to everybody just doing more. And we do that, obviously there is a cost and labor and training that gives you a return on an investment. And as we look through this with most of our customers, and a great example we'll use as many examples today is in accounts payable automation. When you have a company that may be processing invoices manually or doing data entry at least to some degree manually, they may still have 70% of their in processing done through EDI or some other electronic means, but even 30–40% invoices can add up to a lot of people and a lot of time, a lot of delays in the process. So when we look at the ROI, we almost always have to look at the cost of the people and the value you can get out of by automating. So as we go through this, let's talk a little bit off of, sort of the theme of this discussion today, which is information overload. We put a header of this email that we sent out to everyone to invite you here. How do you consolidate faxes, email, and paper? And hopefully you'll understand a little bit about this approach. One of the first things you have to look at is, where does your business stand? Are you between a rock and a hard place? Are you in no man's land? Do you feel like you're already very automated, but there's always room for improvement? Or do you feel like you've got a lot of manual processes? And process to help you determine where you're at is very specific. Tom's going to talk a little bit later than that, give you some examples of that as we get to that. So when we talk about email, email has been around now for many years. And most of us fight every day to keep from becoming a slave to the email process. And it's interesting, we integrate a lot of major business applications for customers today. One of the first things they all ask for is, will this give me email alerts? You know, so many of you are probably getting not only your normal business email today, but you probably have staff members or yourself who are getting tens if not hundreds of emails every day that are coming out of alerts generated by the system that you click on and you take action on. Most of this today can be, although email is a convenient central way to be able to handle that, it's not the only answer, especially if you're on the HR department and you're receiving in hundreds or thousands of resumes by email, or you're in the AP department and receiving in hundreds if not thousands of invoices by department. We often encourage many businesses today that when we walk through the process, they say, well, I get it in by email, it comes in with PDF. What do you do is that they print it, they go to the printer, they get them, they do something with it, and then in some cases they scan it back into PDF and store it all over again. And although that may seem very, very silly, frankly, whenever you look at it, it happens more often than not. And what we help you do in assessing the process is help you look at that, and we talk about, okay, what are all the steps in that process and how do we automate that, if not completely, at least in part. When you look at email volumes, so this is an industry slide that's really a marketing-based email, but I thought it was a good example of what many of us are seeing in terms of emails. Almost every industry out there are seeing a continued rise in emails, especially multi-channel retailers, travel, and all industries in general are up 11% in the last year. And I think that's partly as we go through and you talk about customer service and AP and AR, almost every business initiative today is trying to push customers more to the web and more to do things self-service portals, which is great. It does save time and money, but often it also does create a secondary business process where things are emailed in that need to be taken action on, or that things are faxed or mailed in separately. You know, so the question, are we closer to the paper-free office than we have been talking of many years? And probably not completely. When we talk through this today, we're going to talk and give examples of scanning images or scanning documents in when you receive them via fax, and how do you eliminate that paper. But more important than eliminating the paper in the process, it's making sure that the documents or the content or the forms that you're processing can be acted on electronically, and we're not just kidding ourselves by creating an electronic document and then still treating it the same way as we would paper. File storage is still an issue. Almost all of the major solutions we do for customers today have some sense of enterprise content management involved. There is often still a file store by many customers, especially when we get into multimedia or images. It's a area where they still put files or copies of files on file servers. But more and more people are discovering the value of moving that to an ECM system with the ability to utilize the built-in tools to search that content, to aggregate that content, derive business intelligence from it. So more and more we're seeing these type of pictures go away. But our real goal here is, as we go into the next part, is to talk about the paperless business process. How do you, this is, again, a silly slide when you think about it in terms of the amount of paper there. But recently, when we worked through one customer in a manufacturing process and we looked at the amount of paper that they managed manually to make one product, manage the quality of the whole product, and we took the paper forms in the whole process and all the people who touched it, this happened to be a food manufacturer, we come up along the wall and take them side by side together, and it was 220 feet long as far as all the forms left right when you look at it. So as much as we like to try and get out of this process, every time the government adds a regulation, every time the banks add a requirement, every time there is a change in the tax laws, these often create side processes that require ancillary actions to happen around a business process, and sometimes they start adding back paper that we've worked very hard to get out of it. And what we want to do is we want to be able to look at each business process and figure out how to streamline it or lean it or make it so that we can act on that process with the least amount of interaction as possible. And And not completely all about, reducing headcount, frankly. It's also about quality. When you start utilizing the technology to audit rules and act on these processes, you get a much higher level of quality in the process because obviously, you take some human decision-making out of the process. The biggest area to attack when you're looking at business process automation and return on investment is data entry time. Now, how much time does it take to enter data into the system? Now, you may be receiving over your documents by email. The document comes in as a scanned PDF document that's in an image format. Somebody will be bringing that up on a screen and typing that into a form. It may be 10 times better than it was 5 years ago when you used a complete paper-based process, but it still may not be where you want it to go. When you look at the number of minutes, spent, and this happens to be in terms of the documents, you look at 2 minutes to enter the data for an invoice on average, 1.4 minutes for a loan application or a tax return, 1 minute. Obviously, when you're talking about high-volume businesses, those start adding up fairly quickly. Another factor going on for most of us today is there's more inputs to the beast. And calling the beast, frankly, the information overload we're talking about. As I said, when we added software systems to business process, we enabled it to start creating email alerts and generating emails. We said, okay, wouldn't it be nice if it did this? So let's add this area of quality control. We also started adding more business processes back into it. But then we take a look at the input devices. The fax machine is a factor, but almost every business today has now moved to full-face multifunctional devices or MFPs, where it's so easy now to walk over and scan that. It's easy to take a 5-page document that comes to a branch office in Cleveland, stick it on the MFP, send it, and it emails it, or it sticks it on a file store towards the corporate office. And much more efficient than putting it in an envelope and putting it in the mail. So handle that, and how do you process that and get the full automation? Hopefully some of the scenarios today we'll talk about will address that for you. So as we move on here, one of the things we talk about with our customers is what's your maturity level? When we talk about a process, we ask where you're at. And remember that we're focusing today only on the capture, activate, and socialize part, or the collaboration part. How do you integrate these parts in these different documents or business process flows into the Streamlining? When you talk about the phases of maturity, we classify it into 5 different phases. The first stage of maturity is capture. You eliminated the manila folders and the green hanging folders from most of your offices, or you've greatly reduced it. You've put MFPs out, you've put a central scanning in corporate, and you're capturing and storing more images. The system you ever did before. You're really good about it because you have a good file store. If somebody ever needs to find it, you can go find it, and you're not looking through a bunch of boxes at the archive center or something like that. This phase is where you basic recognition. So OCR stands for optical character recognition. This is when the image gets scanned, the software reads the characters and pulls the data off of the document. You're no longer dealing with an image. And at stage 2, you're starting to utilize that to category and classify the document. You know that this page isn't just file number 112. It's a loan form, or it's a medical form, or it's a resume, or you know what it is, and you pull the relevant data off of this. And they say that most of our customers today are at least at this stage as we talk about it. And if not as a company, they probably are department. Sometimes at one department may be at stage 4, another department in the same company maybe at stage 1. When we're stage through, we're really talking about intelligent data extraction. We're talking about pulling the information off. We're talking about utilizing the software to validate it and make sure that it's accurate. We're talking about putting rules in place that start to help manage that process. For example, maybe receiving 1,000 invoices onto a central email account, and now you've got the ability to read the attachments to say, okay, this is an invoice for the IT department, so it goes to this queue, or this is an invoice for facilities, so it goes for this queue, or this is an invoice that's gone to our Cleveland branch, so we can process it by sending it to a different branch office. Then we get to stage 4, we start talking about distributed capture. How do you bring it all together so that centralized scanning works hand in hand with the floor-based MFPs. Your email is all part of one picture. You don't really care how the documents came in. It all goes to the same engine. It starts getting processed the same way by the same rules engine. And then the last and the final stage, at least the final stage in today's evolution, is enterprise capture, where you're taking that content and document, implementing a rules-based system so that you can start processing it on the fly. The technology itself is trying to achieve what we call straight-through processing. A document comes in one side of the corporation, and no human needs to interact with it because it gets processed all the way through. Most of you are saying, well, we'll never do that with loan processing, or we'll never do that with this particular process. That's okay. We need to do it with every process to get business value. What you really want to look at is what's the low-hanging fruit, and how do we go after the business processes where there are high volume, and it requires a lot of manpower from a knowledge base, a non-knowledge worker application. The other side of that, though, is you may say, well, we don't really have any of those processes. We also have a process that isn't really high volume, but it's very data intensive. It requires a lot of data entry, or it requires a lot of analysis. Maybe thing came up, somebody has to look up account numbers, or invoice comes in, and right now every invoice line item has to be referenced to a general ledger account so that the accounting can be loaded correctly. All that type of interaction can be automated in a lot of these processes using the technology that we're talking about. The sky's really the limit when you look at this, because it's evolved today, and the technology is affordable enough to look at almost any business process now and derive some level of value. The point of this is, there's a better idea. It doesn't have to be a big idea to be a great idea. It doesn't have to cost a lot to take the first steps. If you are at stage 1 in the evolution, and maybe you already have scanning, it may very well be a very small project to apply the OCR technology to move you to stage 2. And it'd be a second project, or a third phase, or a second phase, if you will, to move you into the next level of it. So one of the values of this is that we don't have to come up with big solutions to address this. The challenge that many customers go through is they've already invested a lot in back-end systems of CRM or EP. You may have Oracle apps or SAP. And each one of those, you want to attack these problems, and your CEO and your CEO is saying, hey, we spent $100 million for this application. Well, we don't want to buy anything else. We don't want to add anything else around it. We want to get the best use out of that. That's the great thing about the capture and the ECM business process automation technologies. It really has the ability to set within the middle of this and leverage and to best advantage. In many cases, it'll be the quickest way for you to get the most value out of those back-end applications. So we're not going to spend much time today talking about technology. This presentation is really focused on the business user. So if there are some IT people on here that are looking for bits and bytes, please email. We'll schedule a separate time with you. I'll talk a little bit. I think it's important to kind of understand, block diagram how this works. When you're going to select technology vendors or partners for this, there's a very simple checklist to start with. You want something that's extensible. In today's world, that means browser-based, probably mobile-enabled, whether it's iPad, iPhone, or whatever. Content independent. You still need to be able to work with different ECM systems. Almost every customer we have today has SharePoint and Documentum and or FileNet and or OnBase, plus many things still on the file store that need to be utilized or integrated. And the technology that we're referring to today really doesn't care what the source is. Now, there's a right way and a best practice, and there's a recommendation we're going to make, but you're not locked in. I have to make a big change. Work management is important if you're going to activate the content. You need to be able to set up rules and trigger things to route in the right direction or to present the right information to the decision maker when they need that. So therefore, it needs to be configurable and rules-based. It needs scalable. It needs open, not depend on any single platform. And a multi-tiered classification and indexing when you're talking about the capture technology is really important. Because as we're talking today, we're not talking about invoices in particular, we're talking about a big, broad spectrum of document types. So when I talk about the technology, just a quick slide to help you understand what classification and indexing means. So, for example, when I get an invoice in, it's pretty straightforward for us to scan an invoice into the system and determine, pull the data off of that. We create often what's called a fingerprint for that. When I'm receiving in maybe mortgage documents or loan documents or resumes, as I spoke about, you can start to do pattern matching to recognize, is this a resume, handle it this way? Is this a mortgage application, handle it this way? So many of us handle that through barcodes, smart separator sheets in the scanning office where you may open up a whole package, put a separator sheet together that identifies a tracking number to it, and scan that. But we've evolved today where we can bring keywords and set up rules that help decide what to do with that document. And what's most interesting today is text analytics. We have the ability today to set up rules in something called classification module that essentially read emails and or documents and help to determine what is the purpose of this document. Does it have a phrase inside that document that could mean that it could represent a legal issue at some point, and to index that or forward that to somebody else? So the sky is really the limit today. And we talk a lot about capture, and you're probably thinking scanning and attachments. Just stop there. Even your existing content, the ability of these software tools to mine that information and identify things that are important is there. One particular area of need that we're seeing a lot of is customers are worried about Social Security numbers floating around on different documents inside the system. So we have the ability with the technology to set out, find that, flag those documents, send them back for somebody to look at it, redact them, needed to be to black out those Social Security numbers. Those are all things that are possible. So the block diagram here is really the block diagram of IBM's Datacap Taskmaster. And the Datacap Taskmaster is the back-end services and rules engine behind IBM Datacap project. And you'll see that the rule under service there, the block diagram, is really that rules-based processing which manages the interaction, the inputs from email and fax. It's the image cleanup of images that come through in bad formats, or they've got writing on them, or maybe they were crinkled or they were damaged. Helps you classify them. The redaction is part of this. ISR, which stands for Intelligent Capture, Intelligent Character Recognition, or handwriting recognition. OCR, which is the optical character or text, font-based recognition, and then OMR, which is form-based. If you have come in, a warranty reply card or anything like that, the technology can read that information off, turn it back into a system where we can put that data wherever you want it to. Others that we've talked about is database lookups. If an invoice comes over and maybe the system reads J&J air conditioning service number 4520, but when you look up to your back-end master vendor, that's supposed to be Genesis service. So the system has the ability to make that correction. It isn't just going to throw bad data in. By referencing that or doing a lookup, it can validate that, as well as math calculations, business rules of other degrees. And then, as said before, all this is going to be interfaceable or integratable to your back-end systems, as well as browser-based interface with your scanning systems. If you look across the top, there's really a good sampling here of the departmental or the industry applications that are available to attack. The IBM Datacap is particularly interesting because you can actually apply two different pre-built applications that they have, one for medical forms processing and one for accounts payable invoice management that allows you to take their pre-built applications right out of the box, and allows you to get up and running fairly quickly and get a lot of value pretty easily pretty on in the process. You mentioned in the beginning of this presentation that Miria also has a managed pay software application with an AP automation solution. That bridges the IBM Datacap into a full process, and if you look at this block diagram, the way that solution works and the way a lot of these solutions work when you look at the block diagram is capturing the image processing where you're indexing and validating are part of that. You see the red arrow there that ties the validation back into your purchasing system or your ERP, your accounting system, either validate the information or to put the transactional data back into there. We almost always recommend storing images and the documents themselves into a content management system. The value of that is a whole nother discussion, but that's where you really get into content enablement, where you're allowing data and documents to be searchable or expose those to other business processes. On the right side of the screen, upper right corner, see other applications or functions that we embed as far as AP automation, including the supplier or vendor portal, purchasing cards, travel and expenses, and then all of those get managed through a similar workflow that allows automated routing and management of the documents through the process to avoid bill or duplication of handling. This is an example of, one of the complete business processes. We do a lot in AP automation because that's where a very high return on investment is. But again, think out of the box here, think about your business, and think about where you can apply some of these same strategies. So at this point, I've talked for enough here. I want to encourage you again to send any questions through to Jay Lanigan, that's JLANNIGAN, at highestsystems.com, and we'll try to answer those at the end of this presentation. Right at the moment, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague here, Tom Fitzgerald. He's going to talk about some examples in the process.
Okay. Thanks, Mark, and good afternoon, everybody. As Mark said, I'm going to talk through some of the challenges we've seen with our customers, and then what we've used to solve these issues or solutions, and to build a application that brings them a ROI. Now, the first one you already touched about is the accounts payable, and the challenge there is that you have many invoices being processed with a varying number of line items, but it is processing one thing. It's an invoice. They do differ from vendor, but it is still an invoice, and Datacap automatically identifies on the invoices the vendors, whether it's him or not. It knows where vendor name, things, the address, things like that occur on many invoices or all invoices. They are generally seen on an invoice, and it will automatically identify those. It will validate the vendor exists in your backend system and process the line item details accurately. Image enhancement takes place, does with all the Datacap applications to make the invoice easier to read. But cross-checking is really the heart of making sure invoices are accurate. Datacap will read the lines, reads in the dollar amounts, the description of the items and the line items, but then it compares that dollar amount, adds up the line items, and then compares it to the subtotal. If they don't match, there must have been error with reading the form, maybe the OCR, or maybe somebody sent you an invoice with errors. Maybe there was a smudge in the form or a wrinkle on the page. But it will spot those things not just by data recognition, but also that cross-validation. It also performs calculations to validate tax and anything else you want to calculate that should be happening on an invoice to make sure that it's coming across correctly. Next slide. The next one we also touched on a little bit was that text-based content classification. The issue here is the challenge with the customers face is a large or wide variety of documents being processed. With AP, you have the one type, the invoice, but if you have hundreds or thousands of different types of documents that could come into your system. You can define those in knowledge base, and then have the classification help you to identify these documents. So classification provides an additional method of identifying documents along with the fingerprints, the barcodes, separate sheets, key listing, etc. When you deploy classification in your environment, it starts learning on the fly as you process your documents. Once seen a document a few times, it'll start to participate in the decision process, assisting when other methods aren't confident of what that document is being looked at. So if it doesn't find a fingerprint for it, if it doesn't find a key listing and other things that you've set up, then the classification module will jump in and assist with that identification. It opens behind the scenes. It gives you accurate results. It is the high volume, large number of documents being processed. Now, some customers are processing tremendous volumes of documents each day, and they need a system that can scale. And Datacap scales both vertically and horizontally. You can use a single thread to process with high-speed servers, or you can scale horizontally by adding servers to perform tasks through many threads. Not all customers need the same configuration. If you have a variety of documents that I mentioned before, you deploy additional fingerprint servers and content classification. But if you have a high volume variety, they want to increase the number of rule runner servers, and rule runner is that engine that will run the rules that you've configured for your documents. So whatever your situation is, Datacap can scale appropriately and handle it. It involves processing documents that are related to each other in a case-based situation. The case processing requires a different configuration process, requires a different configuration to process all the documents in a batch together. So you want to have the documents stay together. You want them to be related to each other. Maybe information is on one document that you need to carry to the other. So work together with your scanner. Datacap can receive a group of documents. They come all in a single envelope. In one scenario we have with a customer, it'll carry the common metadata fields across, validate across documents to ensure they are related. So somebody's stuffed multiple or member for an envelope, it will pick that out and flag for you. And also using document integrity functions, because stop a case that's missing pages, or all there and they're out of order and you want it to reorder the pages, it can handle that as well with the built-in function. It's another time saver. Next scenario here is medical claims. Now, this is a specific challenge that may not be related to what you do. Even if this isn't your business, you can see that Datacap has many built-in configurable functions that can handle almost any scenario. With names, the challenge is the number of fields to be captured on a single page. They're all bunched together. There's divide lines between them. It's an OCR nightmare, basically. But they can receive the 1500 and UBO 4 forms with any customization and process red line versions, black and white, and it'll even receive a red dropout from a scanner, with basically where all that's coming across is the text that was added to the form, and it will OCR and index the information to overlay Datacap stored version of that form, and then import a full version into your CMS. So it looks like basically the original form that came in, but it increased the accuracy of the OCR by first dropping everything else around it. So it's a time saver there as well. Those are the scenarios.
So Tom, I have a couple questions that have come here that we just want to cover off of, and this is a good point for this before we summarize up. The people on the phone, a little bit of an overview. How long does it take to implement one of these solutions as you move forward?
Steps we usually typically go through with a customer is to look at current process, design documentation, and basically get a good handle of the current state. Now, it varies based on the type of current state that the customer is in now, the number of variety of documents. If that in that one scenario where we had thousands of different types of documents. It takes a little time to go through those. Get rolling, and especially with the out-of-box functionality, it's not very long at all. I mean, there is some dependencies.
Can you call that? Is it weeks, or is it months, or is it years? Or
the initial design phase, we're talking more in the weeks. Just to get through some design and get ready to identify the solution. And then again, it's not very long. It's in the weeks for setting up the software and configuring these out-of-the-box functions. So it's not a huge effort. Some are more complex than others, but as you said, the out-of-the-box functionality is configured quite easily.
So, and here's another question. Datacap and FileNet seem like very powerful software tools. How hard are they for an internal IT team to support after they're deployed?
That you talked earlier about how it's rules-based. So with customers, there's no quote-unquote development or customization. It's more of configuration. So talking about who you need to interact with on the for IT for the customer side, it doesn't have to be the heavy C# architect people. It's and that's really just for the more complex roles that you would involve like IT. But you could also, a savvy business user, do some of the low-level rules.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's actually the last question here that we have from the team. Jim, do you have any more while we were covering these two?
No, we did not.
Okay. Well, as we always see with these things, the questions, so brilliant in our responses, we seem to cover everything, I guess. The truth is, I'm sure there are other questions, but I'm sure there are other follow-ups. I want to emphasize, please don't hesitate to send them over. We're here to help you answer questions and move forward. Obviously, the self-serving part of this discussion today is that, we're looking to continue expanding and work with different customers. When it comes down to why you should partner with us, we started off with explaining that we've been doing this for 25 years, and our focus as a company is all about content management, business process automation. As an IBM Premier Business Partner, most of the customers we work with today are in a position where they're enterprise. But even small customers today, you may feel like you're too small for this. Please don't hesitate to reach to us. We can usually qualify whether it makes sense to pursue it further in 30 minutes to an hour on the telephone. So no harm, no foul by having that call and discussing what micro challenge is and how we might be able to help you with it. We also have a deep understanding of accounting. Our lead architect for the AP and the financial side of the business is the CPA himself, and he is very astute with what's going on in terms of different financials. So it's not just a matter of an IT solution trying to be leveraged into accounting and finance. We have a lot of depth around. We all maintain subject matter experts around engineering-based processes. We've done a lot with loan processing, and HR is one that we're seeing more as well. I know there's some universities on the fly, actually several of them, and we're working with customers. A great application of this technology is the processing of your incoming applications and transcripts every single year. That's a great opportunity for streamlining that process. I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. We're around for a while, and we appreciate you spending your 45 minutes with us. Please don't hesitate to check out our website, and please send us any other questions. Thank you. Please enjoy your afternoon.